Hello YouTubers, it's time for my review of Doctor Who and Cold War. Yes, I have an intro now. You like that, don't you? Probably not. It's still a work in progress. I still need to do a little work on that. Enough about the intro. This was perhaps one of the most anticipated episodes of the season because it reintroduced the Ice Warriors, who haven't been seen since the third Doctor story, The Monster of Peladon. A lot of you may watch my reviews because I rant about how silly the new series has got. With that said, many of you may be disappointed with this review, because I've watched this episode twice now, for reasons I'll get into in a moment, and I can honestly say that I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It was remarkably close to what we have seen had this been an Ice Warrior story in the original series set on a Russian submarine. Saying that may shock many of you, considering at the end of the last video I did, I said that I would have plenty to rant about in this review. Well, fortunately, I don't. Two things that I remember vividly from this episode was that this one wasn't drowned out with over-the-top, bombastic, orchestrated music. It was subtle, it was quiet, and it was seldom used. Excellent. They all need to be like this. The other thing is the pacing of this episode. For me, from start to finish, the pacing of this episode was comparable to the first half of The Rings of Akaton. And that's great because the story didn't feel rushed. However, there were a few tiny things that I noticed that should definitely be worth mentioning in this review. Okay, I didn't mind that the Ice Warrior got out of his armor and scurried about the ship. I like how they never actually showed what his body looked like. They just restricted it to just his arms. I actually read a review on IGN and they complained that his hands looked too rubbery. Okay, well they look rubbery to me too, but then so did the Slitheen. Rubbery looking aliens is nothing new to science fiction. It's not a big deal for me. And besides, how come everyone is complaining about how rubbery the hands looked when the CGI was horrible? The hands look more believable than the CGI. Give me rubber suits over CGI any day of the week. For me, the thing that did the most damage to me loving this episode was the horrible CGI of Skaldak's face after he's out of his suit. Really? That looks so fucking silly. His mouth looked just like the mouth from the Jagrafest in The Long Game. And anyway, when the Ice Warrior is still in his armor, his chin and mouth are still exposed. And when he spoke, his mouth barely moved. I mean, no more than it normally would for an actor in a mask. But when he's out of his armor, he has this wide, grinning mouth that opens wide when he talks. It doesn't even look remotely close to what was under the helmet. Additionally, the helmet's eye lenses are spaced relatively close together. But Skaldak's eyes are spaced far apart. How the fuck does he see? I mean, if you're going to show us what the Ice Warrior looks like underneath his armor, at least make the anatomy of the CGI match the genuine article. Oh, and I don't know if anybody noticed, but the clicking sound that they added to the Ice Warrior is a direct rip from the Predator film. I mentioned several times before that I did not like the change in the voice. I still don't. You all know me. If you're going to bring a classic monster back to Doctor Who, don't change it to please the minority of viewers who are too love-stricken over Matt Smith to listen to what a whispering Ice Warrior is saying. Something that my fiance pointed out while we were watching it. Everyone knows how the TARDIS translator works, right? Right. Okay. It's my understanding that as long as the TARDIS is materialized in the same location in space and time as its occupants, then it will translate any language, correct? So, how the fuck was the Doctor and Clara still speaking and understanding Russian after the TARDIS dematerialized? No, it isn't because it's at the South Pole, because the Doctor acknowledges at the end of the episode that the TARDIS has just then rematerialized, because he gets a notice on his sonic screwdriver. Plot hole! Now you've drawn attention to language translation, and one is forced to ask, how the fuck does the Ice Warrior understand what the Russians are saying? I suppose it's meant to be understood that the Ice Warrior has his own translator, but if you're not going to explain how two entities that are outside the influence of the TARDIS can understand one another, why even draw attention to translation to begin with? They didn't in the Rings of Akaton, and why does this have to get explained again and again? Don't tell me it's a way of introducing new viewers to the show. Why should the rest of us have to cater to them? If you can't understand what's going on, you've got 50 years worth of catching up to do. Get to it. It's like the last 50 years gets briefly summarized in a quick discussion, and now your new viewers have no reason whatsoever to go back and watch the other episodes. Fuck! The resolution of this episode leaves a lot to be desired. Has there been any classic monster introduced to Doctor Who since 2005 that hasn't been called the last of its kind? No more Ice Warriors! They're all gone! They're all dust! You're the only one left, Skaldak! Oh shit, only 10 minutes left. Oh look, the Ice Warriors aren't extinct after all! They're actually alive and well, with a giant CGI spaceship! How convenient! Why did the Ice Warriors bring the submarine to the surface? All they wanted to do was rescue Skaldak, and they did so by teleporting him up. Why can't they just teleport him from the bottom of the ocean? Do Ice Warrior teleport systems not work through ice? Ice Warrior technology that doesn't work because of ice. Also, the Ice Warriors are hell-bent on blowing your ass up. What the fuck do you do? Sing Hungry Like the Wolf by Duran Duran, because that makes perfect sense. Okay, this is something that I'm having to add now because when I was scripting this, I didn't think about it until after I'd written my script. They chain the Ice Warrior to the side of the submarine at the beginning of the episode, and he struggles to break loose from the chains, and he can't. Later, he gets out of the suit. He scurries about the ship. And then when they corner him, he summons the suit to him. And suddenly, the suit has the power to break free of all the chains and break its shackles. If the Ice Warrior is that strong, why even bother getting out of his suit? He could have broke free anytime. Finally, I want to go over a few things that I noticed in this episode, and I have yet to see these things mentioned in any review that I have read, so maybe it's just me reading too deep into things, but I have a feeling that these are little tidbits that have to do with the overall story arc for this season. Right after the submarine gets grounded, a rock falls on top of the submarine or something, and the bridge starts taking on water. Clara gets knocked to the floor into the water, which looks about knee deep. Then she wakes up and she's got an officer's coat on, and everyone is on a different deck now. They're not on the bridge anymore. What the hell happened right there? I find it hard to believe that Clara got knocked unconscious by falling into some knee-deep water. Was that what we were meant to understand, that Clara got knocked unconscious and we were just seeing the passage of events from her point of view? We missed her putting on the coat and everyone moving to a different deck because she was unconscious? Now, before you accuse me of reading too deep into this, there are two other instances in this episode. Okay, in the beginning of the episode, when the Doctor gets searched, they go out of their way to make it clear what was in the Doctor's pockets. There was a doll, a ball of yarn, and a screwdriver. Keep in mind, this is before Clara allegedly gets knocked out. Later in the episode, they're all back on the bridge, which isn't flooded, and the Doctor suggests they comb the sub to look for Skaldak. David Warner's character holds up the sonic screwdriver and claims that he found it on the floor with the other objects that were shown earlier. When the Doctor collects the items, he tends to behave as though he doesn't recall how he lost them. And Clara seems to take notice of this. A little later, the doctor tells Clara to stay put, for which she replies, okay, and then he repeats himself as though he doesn't remember just saying it. Now, I read a rumor somewhere that the plot behind the 50th anniversary special was that the doctor was losing his memories of his past adventures. If that's true, then that would easily explain all three of these anomalies. We didn't skip 5 to 10 minutes because Clara was unconscious. We skipped them because the doctor had a lapse in his memory. The doctor doesn't remember losing the doll and the yarn because of another memory lapse. And then he has yet another memory lapse briefly after telling Clara to stay put. This would seem to make the most sense, but to quote Spock from The Undiscovered Country, all we have is a theory that happens to fit the facts. In comparison to everything else this season, this episode was fantastic, and it had the flavor of the original series. And for that, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Not too bad. And actually, I would have been willing to give it an 8.5 out of 10 if they haven't mucked up the Ice Warriors' faces with sloppy CGI. If they still whispered, and you had just left out the face completely, you would have had yourself a 9. Oh well. If you like this review, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I post videos every week reviewing the latest episodes of Doctor Who. You can also check out my written reviews of all the new episodes since Rose in my blog. Here's the link. Check it out, especially if you're a fan of the original series, because in my blog I basically compare the new episodes to the standards set by the original series. You can also like this video, share it on Facebook, Twitter, forums, yada yada yada. Moffat Mobile away! Okay, yeah, they did to me too, but then slow did the Slovene. I can't say that. So did the Slovene. So did the Slovene. So did the Slovene. Say that 3 times fast.